blue ocean, red ocean, asking yourself, could I move more towards the blue ocean where I can bring something innovative and where I won't be just one of a million? Be bullish on the effects of AI and how much this will reshape how work is done today. There are kind of asymmetric risks. What can happen? You put a bit too much effort into upskilling. You run a few innovation projects you shouldn't have run. Versus if it turns out to be as impactful as I think it will be, and you don't do anything about it, then it will be too late to do. So I think there is an asymmetric risk. Never get overconfident. Always look into the back mirror, even if things are going amazingly. If you look at the list of Fortune 500s, I'm pretty sure that those companies in the middle of that 10 years are absolutely sure that they will be in it forever. 10 years is such a short time span, but on a macro level, in 10 years, a lot can happen. It's not intuitive, but being aware of that, I think, can help people to make good strategic decisions.
This is Pantrium. We bring you the truth of tech leadership and the unfiltered stories of what really happens when no one's watching. From billion-dollar screw-ups to behind-the-scene battles, we lift the curtain on modern leadership and we reveal what it actually takes to build, grow, and lead in this crazy, fast-moving world. Hosted by myself, Christie H.Kristensen, it is time to get real and have deeper conversations. Thank you so much for joining the Pantrium Podcast. Welcome.
It's my pleasure, Christie. Thank you for having me.
I have a feeling you're going to be honest. And I know we're going to talk about what you like to call Digitalisation 2.0. Before we dive in, as you know, I ask every single podcast guest to introduce themselves with a fun fact. So by all means, Balazs, what's yours?
Yeah, I think we all like to feel very special, but I realized how typical I am because I did what I guess everyone else did. I picked up a hobby during COVID times and I dropped it as soon as it was over. So it was a childhood dream of mine to paint Warhammer miniatures, like little fantasy figures. Space Marines and stuff like that. And when I was a child, it looked like a very expensive hobby. These are horribly overpriced little plastic figures. So as a teenager, I didn't have money to buy it. And now I was like in my 30s and I could decide instead of my parents what I want to buy. So I went heavy on that. And for 2 years, I started to get surprisingly good at it. And the funny thing was how it just all dropped as COVID was over and reality came back. We moved to New York at that time, and I packaged up all my little figures. A whole luggage was full of them. I took them to New York. I haven't ever opened them once.
What is it with people like, habits are really hard, to break? Because to your point, like we all had something we started doing over COVID, and then soon after we all went back to our normal ways. Yeah,
I guess reality is just more exciting.
And with that, let's talk about the reality of your career journey and your experiences throughout your career and in the digital space. One thing I wanted to start with is taking a moment to reflect back on your earlier career. Did you have a turning point where you felt like things were moving, you were going a different way? Can you tell me a little bit more about that and your thinking?
Yeah, I think my turning points were quite early. I would say I was turning a lot in the first 5 years. Then I got on a track and continued on it for the last 10. So really the turns were rather early. I studied marketing and commerce and I wanted to work in marketing. I don't have too much idea what that actually entails. I've seen some movies where people design campaigns and advertisements and stuff like that, and that just all looked cool. And I just kind of thought that being in management is probably a lucrative field. I think many in there, especially if your parents are more in academics or something like that, then you have a very vague concept of what it really means to be in the business world, and you go into it with quite vague ideas and naive ideas about what it is. So I that's where I started my career, and then I quickly realized, and this is one of an early learnings of my career, which I still I think hold up as a North Star, is like you don't really want to compete in red oceans, you want to compete in blue oceans. Marketing is a very, let's say, old field. Obviously, there are people who build amazing careers in it, but there is lots of competition. There is obviously innovation in the field, but you will always face like millions of other people kind of doing the same thing. So that was a realization I had quite early, and I was kind of excited about getting into the tech industry. I got into the tech industry, started to do marketing in the tech industry, and I realized that that's still the same Red Sea or Red Ocean, Blue Ocean problem. And I just kind of by serendipity found user experience and user experience design and user research as this new and upcoming domain. I mean, it was a bit more than 10 years ago. It was not a fully new concept, but in the enterprise world, it was still relatively unheard of. Or it was exactly at that level when people heard about it, they, kind of start thinking that it's important, but not many people have real experience with it. And then, I started to get into more this customer experience and product thinking side of the digital world. But I think the underlying philosophy was this, like always try something new where the competition is not that hard yet, where it's easier to innovate, where things don't feel fossilized, where you can come up with your own processes, you can come up with your own frameworks, you can bring new stuff, and that's what I enjoy doing. So that was a good fit for me.
Awesome. And then when you went in from, and just for everyone who may not be familiar with the blue and red ocean terminology, so, from marketing being overly accelerated, there's so many people that's going for that field, right? So that's red ocean versus research, product design, and so on, right? Which is a blue ocean because it's more innovative. It's a new field, as you were saying, especially in the enterprise space.
It's still new. It's like basically at that, I'm talking about 10 years ago, it's just demand far outstrips supply at that point. It's still new, it's easier to come up with a compelling value proposition in a field where there is lots of demand and supply is still quite nascent, and it's just not there yet. I wouldn't say it's a blue ocean at this point. It has definitely changed, but that's, I think, the other learning, that you have to keep moving. Nothing stays a blue ocean forever.
Definitely doesn't. And things are moving really fast these days as well. One thing I wanted to talk to you about, as you were moving into UX and you were looking at product design and so on, can you tell me a little bit more about your hard lessons you learned early on in your career and what changed over time?
Yeah, I think the hardest lesson for me, so I'm coming from a consultancy background. Basically, all these things, I've done it in a consultant setup. I grew a team of designers up to 40 people. But we were always building things for clients. So I think the hardest learning was how much is it about the client relationship and managing the client. And at some point years ago, I had the feeling that basically clients could do much of what we do if they could just only step back and somehow shed all that organizational weight and status quo. But they just can't. That's just the nature of human psychology, that they can't. That's why they need people coming in with a fresh eye, with an external perspective. So really the learning for me was that maybe it's 30-40% actual product design that you do, and it's 60% managing and facilitating on the client side. You will sit on endless meetings, trying to get to conclusions, trying to get everyone on the same side, agree on the best possible way forward. I probably when I was younger, I didn't expect it to take up that much of the time. But nowadays, when someone new joins our company, I usually quickly explain to them that this is the reality, and we actually hire people, and the most successful people who were good in both things. They could design very compelling experiences, and they could come up with very compelling product visions, product strategies, but they could also sell it on the client side, and they could rally the client behind it.
Yeah. And I suppose also being able to explain that to someone who don't understand the importance of it, right? So be able to again, that sales aspect of it, explaining what has been created and why it's important and why it's good and why it triggers this human psychology aspects of nudging and so forth.
Yes, absolutely. I think that was one of my, let's say, main talents always. Quite quickly proceeding, because I could build up the the critical agreement behind the designs. But what really helps is visualizing a lot. Like, instead of talking about abstract things, bringing various artifacts to the client that makes them understand that, oh, okay, this is how it would look like. And the funny thing is that today this might sound like table stakes, but especially 10 years ago, in lots of large enterprises, this was they were very surprised that you can do it like this. Instead of writing a 1,000 pages long functional specification and starting the project like that, just bring a user flow, 10 connected screens explaining that this is the experience that we want to give to our employees or to our customers, depending what is it. And that was like, wow, it feels like we are talking about something concrete. We can have a debate having the same thing in mind, instead of being lost in abstract ideas, not really understanding each other.
Yeah. Also because it's often extremely complicated, right? Or at least it might be simple, but again, everyone understands things differently. So if you don't show something and then you have something tangible to talk about, it just makes that, like you said, conversation super difficult and open for so many misunderstandings.
Yeah, actually, it's getting trickier because products are becoming, like in a way, the customer experience layer. So what's kind of above the surface is getting less and less important. I mean, it's super important, but what's under the surface, all the backend stuff, all the AI stuff, is just getting thicker and thicker, more and more complicated, and it's harder and harder to visualize those things and create good collaborative processes around designing them. So it's actually a big change in our field.
Yeah. Tell me more about that. Like, how do you go about that today then? And also, what challenges do you see in today's product design world?
There are lots of changes, processes that which have been working very well for 10 years, start to break down, not because they don't work anymore, simply because they start to look wasteful. With this whole generative AI coming into the processes, you have to start asking questions how you want to reshuffle roles. Maybe you want to have more generalists who take care of multiple steps, because AI helps them to do so. It augments their expertise in certain fields. So it's definitely distracting that. And it's happening all very fast. So it's not like okay, we will wait until there is a clear way of working that you can just find on the internet and many other companies are using. If you wait for that, then you will be left behind. So you basically, try to figure out while you are driving. On the other hand, all these new AI tools make it easier to create prototypes and make it easier to create prototypes that have some code behind them. So it makes it a bit easier to prototype these kind of data-driven experiences that I've been talking about. It's very hard to prototype these on static pictures because basically, they don't really make sense if they don't change in real time. So there have to be some kind of code behind it. It used to be very expensive to create this kind of prototypes. With all these new AI coding tools, it becomes very feasible and viable to create these. And I think that the biggest thing that's happening currently is I feel that designers need to become much more technical. On one side, they have to have a very strong understanding of all this tooling, how you create these prototypes. And on the other hand, they have to develop a very solid understanding of how various AI technologies work. So I think a few years ago, a very talented designer could say that, I don't really want to deal with the technical aspect. I will leave that to the engineering team. I designed the perfect experience. They will figure out how to realize it, or that was never a good way of working. You always needed to, ideally, you always interface with the technical teams, but the separation was stronger. Now I feel that designers just need to have a better grasp of all these new technologies because they are very complex. And if you don't dedicate time to understand the foundations of it, then you won't really be able to come up with really good and really compelling experiences.
Going back to your kind of statement on digitalization 2.0, can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, basically, I'm not sure that digitalization 2.0 is an official term anywhere. It's
At least you just made it a term.
Yeah, I made it, but I could argue that it's digitalization 3.0, but that would make it even more complicated. But really, the idea is that the era of deterministic software is in a way over, and we are moving into the era of AI-driven software and agentic AI, which really means that kind of the AI project that started now 70 years ago finally reached, it's definitely not its final destination, but somewhat closer to the original idea that was to create this human-like general intelligence. I don't think we have AGI, but I do think that we have kind of the seed of something that can simulate or mimic human intelligence with pretty strong limitations, but used in the right way, with the right kind of scaffolding. We usually, scaffolding is a nice word. It's basically everything that you put around an AI to make sure it works how you intended. You can start using it for really exciting enterprise use cases. And even if an enterprise feels like it's too early, there is a nice saying, the AI that you use today is the worst AI you will ever use. So this is just gonna get better. I think it's already quite impressive. And, depending on how you feel about it, you can have a debate. Is this ready? Is this not ready for prime time? But I think everyone understands where the vectors are pointing.
And you said the AI you're using today is the worst AI you'll be using. Is that what you just said?
Yes, it's this technology just gonna get better.
Yes,
there is no way that we will go backwards. And even if the progress slows down radically, even then it will be very impressive in a couple of years. But I don't think it will slow down too much. But that's obviously a very subjective.
I wanted to double click on something you spoke about a bit earlier. You said that due to the fact that everything changes so much, the way that you're working, the way you're thinking about product design and interfaces and UX and so on is changing, and you have to almost, build the plane while you're flying. Can you tell me a little bit more about your lessons learned and how you go about that with your own teams as well in today's world, and how you're navigating all of this?
Yeah, it's very tricky. First, in an organization on a leadership level, you have to have like a shared understanding that this is happening. That this is big and it's really happening.
Yeah.
If the management is still contemplating, is this something, maybe it's overblown, maybe it's a hype, maybe we can sit it out, I think that will lead to pretty bad consequences. I think in our case, it was kind of, I want to say half year ago when it finally clicked, like how big it is. And it's, there are still big learnings daily. Like we still run into, a new tool comes out and something that felt like a pipe dream yesterday is suddenly like, hey, this thing works. And now I talked about, how prototyping can be sped up and how it's changing. I mean, I'm using prototyping as an example because that's safer. Building a prototype, okay, who cares if a prototype breaks down? It's a prototype that its job is to
Yeah.
break down occasionally. But then, these things move forward and then you just ask yourself, okay, maybe this is not for the prototype. Maybe this is for the product. And when is that point? So it's extremely tricky. So what we do on a practical level is that we run lots of experiments. It's honestly, I would say it's a pretty expensive thing to have to build up this safety net around it, because you need to dedicate lots of senior employees to experiment with these tools. And often, it's not enough for them to, take it on a spin, like try it out in a couple of hours. Maybe the results are very bad in a couple of hours. Maybe you need days to start mastering it. Maybe after a week of tinkering, you say that, hey, with the right prompting, with the right inputs, I managed to get out from it something that could be very well sent over to the client. But if you stop that a few hours, and I think that's a constant question, like very often there is the initial disappointment. It's like, oh, the end result doesn't look like what I wanted, but it's because you are not using the tool right. And then you keep asking yourself, should I invest more time? Like, should I stop or should I sink some more time into it? But that's the learning. I often see that people are lazy to prompt tools well enough. Like I like to compare it to briefing interns. Like you wouldn't expect your intern to go away and do amazing work with 30 seconds of briefing. Like, do a research on this or that. If you spent an hour giving them templates, showing them what's the definition of good, a previous research, telling them exactly what are your priorities, probably they would come back with something better. And I think it happens in business life. People don't have time for briefing. When, something goes wrong, that's usually, and, someone comes to me complaining like, hey, this is not the kind of art direction I wanted. My first suspect is just, not enough briefing. Like, did you really tell them what you need, or you just expect it to read your mind? And I think because we don't really feel like, how to put that, we don't feel respect towards machines. I mean, we shouldn't. These are just computers, even if they look very smart. We don't, feel the need to explain things. Like very often people write very vague prompts and then they are surprised that what comes out is not what they wanted. So I think that's still a big learning process for many people. Even when it comes to prompts, it's a bit like, garbage in, garbage out.
This is so true. Like I was even trying to, like, this is just on my own little personal projects, right? But I was trying to generate an image. But like, I'm not an expert. I'm not a designer. I don't speak the design language. So therefore my prompt is garbage, to your point, right? Because I can only give it what I know, which is just regular descriptions of what I'm trying to do, right? And also to your point, did I really put an effort in thinking about what I actually wanted to create, or did I hope it for the computer or the intern, for that matter, to magically read my mind? Or like, I'm sure a lot back in your marketing and agency world as well, in any consultancy world, clients always hope that they can read their minds. They don't actually want to pay too much attention on briefing. But to your point, that's actually really important, because otherwise it is garbage in, garbage out.
But by the way, that's a valid point. That I think what good agencies do, or good consultancies, that they have ways to facilitate a good briefing. Like they don't expect that the client knows how to brief them. They enable a good brief. And I don't think that many AI tools do that. And actually, I'm surprised that not more companies focus on that. And honestly, it wouldn't be too hard to build these AI tools, like basically instruct them to begin with, to have a conversation. Often they don't really have a conversation with you, like, what do you want me to do? You throw in your prompt, they give you a result, it's not what you wanted. A good example of this, I saw like someone's workflow, how they create like really high quality. It looks like photography for advertisement. So this is from the marketing space, and I look at the prompts that they provide, and they are like extreme. They require very deep expertise, like describing what kind of camera lens they want to be there. But even how the model is positioned, like they use terms I don't even know. Like I remember reading that that the girl turning back towards you have swimmer shoulders. I never really thought that that's a term. Like I understand how they want the symmetry of the person, but I would never use that because I never worked in that field. I never worked with models. I don't know, what are you looking for? So human expertise is still for now very much needed. I think AI labs talk a lot about that this won't be needed eventually. The idea would be that the model really, figures out what you want, but I don't fully buy that, because I think if you need to be able to explain to the model what you want, what's the image in your head that you would like to see generated. And if you don't know the right terminology, you couldn't describe it to another human either. You couldn't explain to your photographer what you want to see.
I totally agree. I have seen it on my own work as well. I think that's a good little nudge of innovation. We need an AI tool that understands how to teach us to prompt properly.
I wouldn't be surprised if during the next year we would see more experiences where this is baked into the product. Like, it facilitates a good brief.
Yeah. Cool. Let's move on. I wanted to hear a bit about interface. And I wanted to hear your thoughts on that in the coming future as well, for your own success and your own focus on product development. How do you see interface playing a role? Because there are the conversations saying that interface will no longer be important, because the interface will just be voices. We will speak, we'll engage, we will no longer have websites and apps, because it will just be us communicating. What's your take on that?
Yeah, well, on one side, there are just tasks for which visual representation just works better than sound. Like I could come up with million examples where we could test it, how quickly you can get it done with 3 buttons and 2 scales versus explaining it. Also, if, the problem with sound is that it's a very open-ended thing. It doesn't give much, in a way, scaffolding to the human. Like, okay, what can I choose from? That's why they give you a menu in the restaurant. There are some cool restaurant concepts where they don't have a menu, and it can actually be quite confusing when the waiter comes to your table, tells you about 8 dishes you never heard about, and you don't remember them after the third, and you are like, I don't know, the second sounded good, I would like to have that. So I don't think that, interfaces will totally disappear. Maybe there will be less of them. I can imagine like cool hybrid experiences where this is all very dynamically generated around you. Like, I don't know, whatever device we will use, are these glasses, are these earphones, but, maybe there will be a holographic display whenever you need it. It disappears when you don't need it. And maybe, I don't think it's such a, sci-fi idea to think that these AI systems will be able to dynamically decide what do you need. What would be the most comfortable way for this human to interact with me, to get the task done. I just wanted to stress that this kind of hybrid, dynamically generated interaction surfaces, may it be sound, may it be like a visual representation, I think they will be dynamically generated based on your needs. But I don't think that's the next 1-2 years. That's more like 5 years. But I think we will see more and more voice interfaces. I'm very interested in the new Alexa Plus. So the Amazon Alexa Plus, so they supposedly redesigned Alexa with a large language model behind it, or multiple large language models. I think Alexa was one of these. They sold millions of devices. No one thinks it's great. everyone uses it to, control Spotify, maybe put up a timer for cooking, but it's actually the device is in everyone's home. So if Amazon suddenly switches the intelligence behind it, people will have an amazing voice assistant in their home, and millions of people very suddenly. You need it to know what you need to say for it to pick up on it. You kind of need it to understand its command words. With an LLM, obviously, it becomes much more dynamic. For me, that's the whole big paradigm shift with large language models and all the experiences you build on top of them, that for, let's say, the last 30 years, humans needed to adapt to the way of thinking of the computer. And now we finally flip it, and I guess reverse it back to a more natural order when we build machines and, they make an effort to understand us.
And speaking of customers, let's stay with that for a moment. What do you think is some of the challenges, especially in your space, when it comes to the adoption of new technologies, new products versus what the regular day-to-day Mr. and Mrs. Smith are willing to and are ready to receive?
When you look at statistics, and there are cool diagrams which show it how adaptation of new technologies speeds up radically. American households adapting refrigerator, smartphone, internet takes X years. And, the sudden explosion of how many people use, for example, ChatGPT, I feel that these things are getting faster and faster. Actually, I don't think I've ever seen a technology that got this quickly adapted. I think it goes back to what I said. This is not a technology you need to learn. The whole, idea of this technology is that machines just get you. So in a way, especially for digitally laggard or not digitally native consumers, this makes things easier. It's a bit like if you look at your grandmother, usually you find that they are more comfortable using a smartphone than a computer, like
My
a
grandmother
desktop
don't
computer.
do any of it.
I see many grandparents at least engaging with their smartphone. Why they could never operate a notebook. Notebook is an earlier technology. Just, I guess, a touch screen is a more intuitive. It's just whatever you touch does something. There is less abstraction than clicking around with a mouse. And now this is one more thing, like that. Here is this robot that just gets me. If I, want to initiate a process, I tell it I want to do it, and it does it. So I think on the consumer side, this is something that's very easy to adapt. Also, because this is a fully cloud-based technology. I mean, they talk a lot about using LLMs on the edge. I think that's not happening too much today. So it's not even that people need very modern or very powerful devices. They just need stable internet, and all the computation happens up in the cloud. So I think this will be rapidly adopted. On the enterprise side, I think it's a bit trickier, because there this whole big paradigm shift of going from deterministic software to this new kind of non-deterministic software.
Suddenly, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, like deterministic software is if this, then that. If there is no bug in the software, the same process will end with the same result 100 times from 100 tries. This is what an enterprise, this is what a chief information officer is used to. This is how software works. Of course, there are bugs. There is compromised data going in, whatever, but you can always understand what went wrong then. You can usually fix it, or you can set up guardrails against it, and it's not happening again. As the whole premise of this technology, this new general intelligence that we are building, general artificial intelligence that we are building, that it doesn't work like this. It works like human intelligence, and honestly, your human workers, they usually do mistakes. But you are used to that. Since we were born, we are used to being surrounded by parents. Our parents make mistakes, and we treat it as part of life. But we, during our socialization the last 30 years, we got used to it that software does exactly what we expect it to do. And I think now enterprises, like organizations, are very conflicted about this. There is this very powerful technology. We can automate things and augment things with it. We can reach like whole new levels of efficiency and productivity and build new kind of customer experiences, but it sometimes doesn't exactly do what we wanted it to do. Just like our human workers. I think it will take a couple of years for us to wrap our head around that. But the upside is just too high, too big to say that, okay, let's ignore this. This is not ready for us. Let's wait for this technology to mature. It's just everyone feels how powerful it is. So I guess this dilemma is on every CIO's and CDO's table at the moment.
Definitely. And I wanted to talk about your recipe of success per se. Can you tell me a little bit more about what have you been stung on a little bit recently?
I work in an industry that had, I think it's safe to say, very strong 10, 15 years, up to like 2 years ago, like digital consultancy. There was almost a feeling that there are two worlds. There is the enterprise world, the old school IT world, and then all these new startups came in, mobile phones came in, intuitive customer experiences, user experiences came in, real-time data processing, APIs, all this stuff. And it was all very new for the enterprise IT. Both employees and customers started to demand this new kind of experiences that you can only realize if you fully rethink your stack and how you work, real-time experiences, working with real-time data. And we were able to service this need coming in as external consultants. We were kind of riding this wave for 10, 15 years. Here is a learning. If you ride the wave for 10 years, you naturally start to think that it will last forever. Yeah. You develop this image in your head that this thing is invincible. And I feel that 2 years ago, we hit like a kind of a perfect storm situation. Post-COVID, suddenly there was this hangover after inflated digital spendings. There was, and still is, I think, this perennial worry of some looming recessions. Plus, these two worlds, I think, merged a bit. So enterprises just caught up. They learned, they became digitally native in a way. They have a quite large digitally native workforce. They have great product managers. They often have great solution architects. So, the gap closed. And that basically forces us and forces me as well to kind of redefine what's the value that we bring to the table. How can, because you hire consultants because you think they bring expertise. I mean, you can hire them also just to have more hands, but that's a bit of a commodity business. You don't want to do that. You want to be hired because you bring some kind of extra value, extra expertise to the table, and then you have to ask yourself, what's that expertise? And I see that honestly in terms of agentic AI and generally AI. I feel that, again, kind of two words start to emerge. The early adopters, which are usually smaller companies, consultancies, startups who can take full advantage of it, and the larger enterprises who are kind of rightfully, they have a lot to lose. If they mess up something, reputational damage, legal damages, damaging their customer relationships. So I'm not blaming them. Obviously, they need to be, but they need to thread more lightly. But in the same time, they can't ignore how powerful this paradigm shift is. So they will need this new technology. So I feel that they will tap, again, increasingly into consultants.
Yeah. And if we are then starting to look into the future with what you just said here as well, that you need to adapt and you need to also understand what's coming, and you can't just lean back and say, oh, this have worked really well for the past 10 years, right? For you, which rule in the industry or in your sector do you think needs to be broken in order to move forward?
Well, there are lots of questions around pricing models. For sure. Very often today, IT consultants are paid, by the hour. It's basically an effort-based pricing. There are lots of question marks around that, especially with AI augmented coding coming in. Maybe what matters is not really how much code can you produce. It's more like how much can you realize outcomes. So I see, for example, outcome-based pricing coming in. That basically means the client has an outcome in mind. We want to decrease whatever cost here. We want to increase efficiency there. We want to increase revenue there, whatever. And you look at those numbers, you do some simulations, so you build some models and you say, yeah, that looks realistic. And then you will take part of the economic gain that the company is having. You will just take a cut from that. That would be radically new. And the other is really radically rethinking what kind of roles you need in a consultancy, what creates value, upskilling people, like those people who want to stay valuable in the industry. They have to play a lot with all these AI tools and continuously think about, okay, how do I want to redefine my role? How can I create more value? So I think it's a two-way street.
Yeah. And what uncomfortable truth would you have wanted, or do you want people to realize today and act on, for more importantly?
Yeah, I think this whole AI transformation can be quite painful. People generally don't really like to transform their business too much. I think everyone likes to innovate a bit or start new service lines. These are fun things, but when they basically say to you that, okay, you have to change the engine, everyone is like, oh, no, I don't want to do that. And I think even if it's not time yet, many companies should at least start having workshops in their executive management, asking themselves, what if we need to rethink this whole thing? How would we even start that? Because I do believe that we managed to tap into a new general purpose technology, similarly to the steam engine or electricity. I kind of believe that it will be definitely bigger than smartphones, but maybe even bigger than the internet. So I think, you asked for an uncomfortable truth. Top managers tend to be over 40. They often kind of hope that they can, this will be a smooth sailing. They still have 30 years to work looking at the job market today. So no, it won't be a smooth sailing. It's time to address that underlying, oh no, I don't want to do this. And this is happening.
It's time to disrupt yourself. You can't just lean back and innovate and do fun things. You need to do the hard things.
Yeah, exactly.
Last question before we wrap up. In this moment of uncertainties, what's something that you are doubling down on right now? And what do you believe others should urgently be paying attention to before it's too late?
Yeah, I think I will sound like a broken record. I said that people coming from a business or a design background need to get a bit more technical. So that's what I'm exactly trying to do now. I was always interested in technical concepts, but I realized to truly understand what this technology can do and separate the hype from reality, I just have to do my own research, understand how a neural network works, how agentic AI truly works, what are the limitations. Obviously, I'm not going to be an engineer and I won't be able to build anything with this technology. But in order to have even to have good ideas, even to spot good opportunities and really just separate, pipe dreams from things that could be built tomorrow, and to have educated conversations with your more technical colleagues. You just have to do it, and I think it's doable if you. Yeah, it's again an uncomfortable truth that most people, or many people probably at this point, could invest into this 1 or 2 years. And next to work with an ongoing career, that's not an easy thing to invest time into learning.
I think it's so important, and I totally agree. Like learning, and it's your future, right? So you have to make sure you're also just evolving as everything else is evolving. Balazs, we're totally out of time. It has been such a pleasure having you on the podcast today. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for spending your time with us. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you have feedback, topic ideas, or guest recommendations, we are all ears. Pantrium is growing thanks to our community of listeners. So if something resonated with you, we would love for you to share your favorite takeaways. And just a quick note. The views shared by our guests are entirely their own and don't necessarily reflect the companies they work for. That's it for now. Thanks again for tuning in. Until next time.